Could these questionable images simply be the result of the astronauts struggling to plant the flag in the lunar surface? Or is there more going on than meets the eye?
We have a piece of equipment that breaks, then we have to go out and sometimes in a fairly expeditious manner to fix the equipment. When we were flying the shuttle, we had very, very specific, very choreographed spacewalks. And so for every hour that we spent outside in the vacuum of space, we spent about 7 hours underwater, making sure that we knew exactly how things were going to be. There's a full-scale mock-up, as you guys saw, there's a full-scale mock-up of the space station down there.
We'll continue to do what it takes to turn science fiction into science fact. The ultimate destination is Mars. So if you gave me all the money in the federal budget today, I could not get a human to Mars.
I think that what you're doing is taking a shot in the dark. You have no way of knowing if any commercial entity will ever be able to put a man in orbit, no matter how much money you throw at them. What you're doing is you're taking NASA's manned space program and making it a faith-based initiative. I yield the rest of my time.
We performed one spacewalk to increase our scientific capability on one of the external platforms.
There it is. There's the world out there.
The door has opened.
But it was only as a result of some heroic work by the ground team and Thomas that actually got us out the door for that EVA to be successful.
Security is checked. Your parachutes are not deployed.
In addition, we also accomplished a spacewalk for getting a repair done on an external MDM.
Give me a short count. Okay. Stow umbilical.
That MDM failed, and we had it repaired within 3 days. Another amazing event by our teams. In addition, Expedition 51 Thomas was able to grapple the Cygnus vehicle, and we unloaded thousands of pounds of cargo and reloaded it with trash. And we've launched 34 different satellites. Our incredible time frame for scientific investigations as well. We are, of course, going to miss Oleg and Thomas. They are exceptional astronauts. They are exceptional astronauts in every sense of the word. But mostly, we're going to miss their sense of humor and camaraderie.
Well, that's very, very reassuring what we've seen there.
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. And I'm a diver, a scuba diver, and when you get down underneath the water, you're floating. And that's just like in space until you start to move, and then you make waves, or because there's no gravity.
After we got the hatch open, they had stood up in the seat and got ready to go, and we cleared him to go, and then he took and pushed off from the seat.
I figure out. I think I'm dragging a little bit, so I don't want to fire the gun yet. Yeah, separate from the spacecraft.
Ed White is flying at 17,000 miles per hour. 200 miles above the Earth.
Okay, I'm out.
The astronauts' helmets don't swivel. They are fixed to an airtight ring base, which is sewn to nearly 1/4 of an inch of multiply fabric, nylon, and mylar. Once pressurized, it becomes very stiff.
Looks like inside. Somebody's little head would be inside of here. So you can see, you can turn your head all the way around while you're inside of there, but the helmet stays still. So that's determines your how far you could see. And it's usually pretty sunny out there, so we have to wear our sunglasses, and this is our sunglasses right here, which make you look pretty cool.
Spacewalk, and as you can see, that's the first American air bubble flowing from the helmet. And again, a bit slower now. Look at that. That's so funny.
As White floats in space, a glove drifts out of the capsule.
Looks like a thermal brush, Jim.
I don't even know whose glove it was. I don't know whether it was his or mine.
I feel like $1 million.
The only thing to do would be to disconnect them and let them float around out there. I mean, it was, you know, these are things that's in everybody's mind.
To realize, number one, it's been done, and that we did it. It blew me away.
This is the greatest experience. It's just tremendous.
Blue World takes me on adventures all over the planet. Today's adventure takes me to the Johnson Space Center at NASA in Houston, Texas.
And I'm standing on the International Space Station!
Well,
神舟7号请讲。
仪表显示轨道舱火灾，注意检查。
神舟7号请讲。
仪表显示轨道舱。
This thing is huge, a swimming pool nearly the size of a football field.
Those particles that you see emanating from the airlock is said by the EVA officer Paul Baim in Mission Control to be particles of water from the crew's sublimators on their spacesuits.
There you go. Come up a little bit there. Okay.
I descend into the clearest water I've ever seen, and it looks like an underwater movie set. The pool is a staggering 40 feet deep, and everywhere I look are full-size replica sections of the International Space Station.
The area after 160 miles up is unacoustic, so there is no transmission of sound or heat. That's what they say why the International Space Station didn't melt down so far, and why the astronauts don't get transformed in ashes. Previously we were seeing astronaut swimming. Here we are seeing now some bubbles just getting out of the ISS and some of the astronauts. So that was the first one. This is probably like a 5 seconds video here, and already 2 bubbles were visible. So there is some more. There you go, another one. Lovely. It's amazing how these guys doesn't burn with 2,500 degrees. Anyway, in the next segments we'll be looking at EVA 30 and EVA 31 that were made with a GoPro camera with audio. Here usually in these subaquatic walks, usually they muffle the sound so we could not listen the real sound that's going on. Luckily we have access to these 2 ones like this. This is from EVA 30, and we'll start to see some of the bubbles and listen some of what's the real sounds of the spacewalks. So we realize this is just a subaquatic walk. So this is now, I think, time for some shower air bubbles. There you go. It's so many that the guy put the hand in front of the camera trying to hide, because they were too many, but they keep flowing. Just too many. Because they keep flowing out of the ISS, the guy decided to change the camera to another view. Hello, subaquatic man.
I can see from one end to the other very clearly, meaning that the underwater visibility is over 200 feet.
I don't know. You cannot have this sound in space to start, like subaquatic sound of bubbling, and the guy like Darth Vader. Some more bubbles going on. Put some slow motion so everyone can see these bubbles just getting out. This one was from the solar panel-ish. Anyway, see you guys soon.
Once weighted properly, the astronauts hover in the water as if floating in the weightlessness of space.
Rain of air bubbles. Not one, not two. It's a gazillion. Ay, ay, ay. I want to see how do you debunk this. It's debris from space. You got to be blind if you believe that. Look at that. It's too many air bubbles. That's a good fabric for protection of the vacuum of space. I think the question now that everyone should be making is how much money have been spent on the ISS? Was a lot of money. Where is all that money?
And I circled it so you can see exactly where I'm talking about. And these astronauts are preparing to go outside. So if you watch closely, near that baloney door, you'll see lots of bubbles here shortly. Then what I'll do is I'll zoom in and let you watch again from a much closer position. And then hopefully you can see why so many people have questions about what NASA is doing. For starters, why is that light always flashing like that? We see it on the ISS Live, we see it on spacewalks all the time, but never from the ground as the sun flashing in and out as it sets. But let's listen in now, and remember to keep your eyes where the circle was before, and you'll see space bubbles.
And check power LEDs. All 4 LEDs are off.
All 4 LEDs off.
For both of you on your DCMs, demate your SCU, install the DCM cover, and stow the SCU in the pouch.
The crew members going through some final steps before they get out the door. Just to update you, the spacewalk has officially started. That start time coming at 6:24 a.m. Central, 7:24 a.m. Eastern, while the station was just a little under 250 statute miles just to the north of Indonesia.
Alright, finding my pouch is not going to be easy. Oh, there it is. Well, once you get in, let me know, get yours in, let me know, because I'm going to have to come your way a little bit. Okay.
All right, so now we'll zoom in close, and remember there will be 2 separate little bursts. Now some people may say, well, those are just little particles or little ice pieces. Well, then they should orbit with the ISS as they are falling around the planet, just like the ISS. There's no reason for ice particles or air bubbles or dust or anything to fly rapidly out of the airlock door at rapid paces. I mean, they're not being shot out of the door. What's going on here?
Imagine going in a car at 60 miles per hour, and you can stick your hand out the window. Well, your hand wants to blow into the back seat, right? Because the wind is so fierce, the atmosphere is so thick. So imagine at 100 miles per hour, what would happen? Imagine then at 1,700 miles per hour, what would happen? Your hand would blow off. Now imagine at 17,500 miles per hour. This is what they say the ISS is moving right here, 17,500 miles per hour.
We have calculated a short time ago that the gravitational pull of the Earth up here at 400 kilometers altitude is only about 10% smaller than it is on Earth. So if the Earth is attracting us, why don't we, Paxi, me, the entire space station, why don't we just crash onto the Earth?
More noise, and more bubbles. Look at that. It's not one, it's a lot of them.
Well, the thing is that we also have a huge velocity vector. We are flying at about 8 kilometers per second. And that means that if there wasn't the gravitational pull of the Earth, we would just keep going straight at that velocity. However, because the Earth does attract us, the Earth curves our trajectory so that we keep flying around it.
Well, in order for them to step outside for a spacewalk, there has to be a complete void of atmosphere. If you stuck your hand out the window of the ISS, moving 17,500 miles per hour up in space where they say they are, then you could have a sleeved shirt on, a long sleeve shirt, and it wouldn't even ruffle. It wouldn't even blow the fabric at all. Okay, so keep that in mind as I show you these three anomalies, okay? So I'm going to show you some clips of debris moving and changing direction and them displacing things by moving close to them. By moving their foot close to something, it moves. And I'm going to show you this is impossible. Practicing, with all the cameras going, like 3 cameras, and yeah. So you still don't believe that this could be filmed down here and shown to us as actual spacewalks? Let's see. So here we are, supposedly on the ISS. This is from a spacewalk. And I superimposed the swimming pool, the NBL, the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, where they practice. Okay, so you can see nothing can make a turn. There has to be zero atmosphere for them to step out of a vehicle moving 17,500 miles per hour. There can be absolutely no atmosphere at all, not even ruffle a feather or hair on their head if they were exposed, anything exposed. So right there is busted. It cannot make a turn like that. So every object in motion that's not tethered has to travel in a straight line. Here's another bubble. This is from a long time ago. Many of you have seen this already. Now, they would claim it's a piece of ice or debris. It can't curve. It can't make turns. Objects cannot zigzag in a weightless vacuum.
So, despite objects in free fall being weightless, their mass does have an effect. That effect is called inertia. Inertia is the property of objects to continue in their existing state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless their state is changed by an external force. And mass is a measure of an object's inertia.
Let's see. Oh, see, here it comes. Oh, it's moving already. See that? Whoop. Whoop. It's moving. Moving. Let's see how quick. You can see it compressing right there. Up. Compress down. Up. Clearly hasn't touched it. It's got to be in water. There's just no other explanation for that. And just too much evidence supporting that. Another impossibility in space. Because, again, the foot is going to displace water. Okay, so watch this. Whoa, see that start to move? All right, let's zoom in to the next. Let's take a closer look. All right, that strap is going to move before his foot gets there. And that indicates that this stuff that they say they're training in the NBL, they're actually filming in the NBL, the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. They're in water because that strap has no idea, in a vacuum, that strap would have no idea that the foot is approaching because there's no atmosphere. But in the pool, there's water being pushed towards it. Boop, you see that? It already started to move right there. Boom, still moving. And then here's underwater at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And here's what you would expect because of the currents in the pool, right? There, that just made a little left turn. Did you see that? Also, the astronaut's causing a little drag as he backs up, and that pulls the debris. There's filtration systems. That's what we're seeing in the spacewalk. Sorry.
Whitson and Fisher currently performing what are known as buddy checks. And the simplified aid for EVA rescue, the handles on that on each jetpack that they wear. In the unlikely event they would require the use of those jetpacks to fly back to the safety of the space station.
Yeah, I believe it's Venus Stanchion, is that correct? On 3002.
That is affirmative, the zenith stanchion.
Okay, that's on and latch. Do I need to loosen it all the way? Make it work with the others? That's not far enough. This one's...
And of course, we'll leave that ratchet tethered to the crew lock bag, and you can then translate to the failed XPECA H1. Nader.
I wonder if you could do vertically on that fram handrail. I don't know.
And Peggy, see that you've got your BRT. You think you've got a good body position to break tort?
Yeah, let's see if I can get it in here.
Remember, only light touch on the radiator.
3 hours, 28 minutes into today's spacewalk, an outstanding view of Jack Fisher as he makes his way towards the Columbus module to retrieve a portable foot restraint.
Some sort of cable that looks an awful lot like a gap spanner. Be tempting. I won't touch it though.
On this 200th spacewalk in support of space station assembly and maintenance, a scintillating view of Jack Fisher as the International Space Station flies directly over Acapulco.
Should we need over there? We'll do them here.
Great question. Your settings are going to be 6, clocking of 6, and it's going to be Tango, Tango, Echo 1.
Tango, Tango, Echo 1.
Good words. And Peggy, see you at the airlock.
Okay, the hatch has opened. We see a piece of thing just flying out from the capsule into the outer space. That means the hatch has been opened.
Look in the hatch.
And now Zhai Zhigang.
And Peggy, you are go to open the hatch thermal cover at this time and start working on stowing your XPECA and crew lock bag.
Appear to be left undone today are lower priority tasks, that being the installation of wireless antennas on the Destiny laboratory and the installation of a high-definition camera out on the truss of the station, that work to be picked up on a future EVA.
So something just flushed out of the module means there is still some pressure difference between the orbital module and the space. Oh, we can see light. Oh, we can see light.
In 2013, a gallon of water leaked into one of their spacesuits in a matter of seconds. NASA doesn't really have a proper explanation for how on earth this could have happened. There shouldn't be water leaking into someone's helmet and a person almost drowning in space. How can you drown in space? They now wear snorkels to make sure that they don't drown in space. How can this be happening? A snorkel in space? There could be some water in the porous plate sublimator. When they were on the moon, they supposedly had about a gallon of water, but that cooling system is supposed to be well away from their head. There really is no sane explanation for why a gallon of water would leak into someone's spacesuit, unless you realize the whole thing is faked inside a swimming pool.
I think it's a reflection of the Earth from the sun. Well, the hatch is being totally opened. I think the blue part is a part of the Earth. "42-year-old Zhai Zhigang, Chinese-trained taikonaut, is about to perform EVA 343 kilometers above the Earth. This is This is 4 o'clock. 440, exactly 440, Beijing. And the first task when he is outside is to transfer some experimental materials to the module. Well, we see Zhai Zhigang. And we can see loud applause from the control.
Water's definitely not a vacuum. In order to keep the water pressure from squishing the astronauts as they go deeper, the suits are inflated to a pressure just a few psi higher than the surrounding water. When an astronaut goes deeper into the pool, the water pressure pushes in on the suit and tries to compress it, so the suit is given more internal pressure to keep it inflated correctly. As the astronaut ascends towards the surface, the air inside the suit expands and tries to overinflate the suit, so some of the air is released. In this way, the suit always stays inflated just as it would be in space. After a couple hours of training,
he's waving to us. He's waving to us. He said, I have been out of the hatch. I'm feeling good. To all the people in my country and the world, my greetings. My country, please have faith in me, and my team will finish this mission.
问号注意。
You use the every steps.
With the help of the handlebars installed on the outer body of the spacecraft, he is now moving.
This is coming from the
Well, this shot is actually taken from the camera on the propelling module. An astronaut in outer space.
The other astronaut is right there in the hatch.
Yeah, we can see the other astronaut, Liu Boming, is also at the hatch. So he is basically conducting.
More bubbles.
An astronaut in outer space.
The other astronaut is right there in the hatch.
Yeah. We can see the other astronaut, Liu Boming, is also at the hatch. So he is basically conducting. and also I believe, some experimental materials.
南亚跟踪正常。南亚跟踪正常。
But if you go in every spacewalk, from NASA, Chinese, Russia, whatever, if you go, all of them have space air bubbles. So.
And now we see the live feed again. The flag of the People's Republic of China, the flag of the People's Republic of China is unfurled by one astronaut. With the background of the Earth, we can see the flag. He's waving the flag of the People's Republic of China, for the first time being unfurled by an astronaut in outer space.
They are working, are constantly going through the cycle of darkness and light.
Around the Earth.
And it must be very disconcerting to have the lights turn off every 40 minutes and 45 minutes.
Yes, exactly. You see sunrise and sunset in such a quick way.
Mm-hmm.
I presume it must be a very different and enlightening experience. The environment around you is just pitch black, is as black as it can get.
On the day side of Earth is so bright that your eyes iris down and you can't see the stars.
Mm-hmm.
But on the night side of Earth,
it's just black.
No, you're actually, you feel like you're floating among the stars.
Mm.
They're all around you. They're not twinkling at all.
Already feel the material.
I think
stars when you're in space.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Yeah.
All
because
the
you
time.
can see. Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
Yeah. It's not a
which is
black
cool
void.
thing.
I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of little polka dots.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas. Magellan clouds of the Milky
you
Way
see
galaxy.
the Magellanic clouds.
Magellanic. See, I just wanted the Magellan
well, there's a large
clouds.
one
I didn't
and a
want
small one, right?
Yeah.
And then you can see the zodiacal light.
Whoa.
But the NASA actors from 1969 say that you can't see the stars in space.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any. You can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
I don't remember seeing any.
Z1 to check out EV2's APFR ingressing.
The point of all this effort is to provide a learning environment for astronauts where they can practice tasks over and over in simulated zero gravity before they're required to do it by themselves in space. Tasks that are easy on land become much harder in zero gravity. And harder still while wearing a spacesuit that has to be able to protect an astronaut from the vacuum of space.
Let's not forget space bubbles.
Dave Williams about to move out of the Quest airlock. Those particles that you see emanating from the airlock is said by the EVA officer Paul Baim in Mission Control to be particles of water from the crew's sublimators on their spacesuits.
That's the unit. There you go. Come up a little bit there. Okay.
The divers are also responsible for keeping a careful eye on everything happening. Each astronaut has 4 divers assigned to him or her. 2 are safety divers. Another has a camera with a cable going to the control room. And there are more cameras mounted all over the inside of the pool, too. In the test director
buoyancy laboratory, which is just basically a large swimming pool where we practice our spacewalks, and they make us neutrally buoyant so we don't float and we don't sink, and it's like we're kind of simulates that we're in space, and that's how we practice our spacewalks. But this training is all very it's not very continuous. It's like pieces of a puzzle, and all these pieces are all jumbled up, and you don't really get to put them all together until you actually do the mission.
It's like a glass-bottom boat. This is the cupola. It sticks down below the space station. It's one of those places you find yourself hanging out in all the time because all you want to do is look back at our planet. I think some questions I had were about what do you do in your free time?
Much. So if there is the force of gravity up here, why am I floating? To explain that, we have to introduce the concept of free fall. So let's use this model of the Earth. And let's enlist the help of a friend, Paxi. You might know her. Paxi, hello Paxi. She's with me on the International Space Station. So for the purpose of our little demonstration, let's assume that Paxi is the space station.
Cupola, which is one of the windows we have, and that's a picture watching. Hello. Been here once before. Hello. Been here once before.
And let's enlist the help of a friend, Paxi. You might know her. Enlist the help of a friend, Paxi.
Okay, let me try and give you a demonstration of water and just how it will form a sphere and the surface tension and of course the intermolecular forces in the water causing it to form that sphere up here on the space station.
Я очень рад работать на станции и с Новым годом.
Да, я согласен с Новым годом и большое спасибо за все, вы делаете.
Thank you very much again. Thank you for your time. Have a good flight and many more exciting experiments on the orbit. Thanks a lot.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. What do you
Like if you have a look at this guy going back towards the screen. There's some strange shadows there, look like they're CGI'd in. Using computer graphics, they edit out the supporting wires and edit in these rotating floating objects. They always seem very concerned with the object. Chris Hadfield looks at it very closely. You don't want the object getting too far out of control, because if it starts bouncing off the cabin in a weird way or goes back to the blue screen, it could ruin the whole illusion.
Beautiful and remarkable things to see when you look out the cupola. I guess so far from me, I like the waters, the shallow waters in the Caribbean or the atolls in southeast Pacific, or southeast Pacific, or
Now, before 2012, NASA used masking techniques much like we do in Photoshop and After Effects. But now we're able to simulate water and objects live in real 3D space. So we're able to take models of things that are photorealistic and rotate and move them while we are going live. Before, we used to have to render these effects frame by frame by frame, and it took extremely long amounts of time.
All right, so let's take some questions from the thread. And by the way, it's awesome to see the microphone just flying around over there. That is not something that I'm used to, even in our virtual reality lab where we can make stuff like that. We just haven't yet. So let's go to the thread. So we got a question from Hakeem, which is obviously astronauts train extensively for the
I don't know. We're going to have to do something for you.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Watch this. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Watch this.
Okay, so this is one of NASA's older videos where they use post-processing and masks. This is a video layer mask in augmented virtual reality. We're going to see him lose his finger here. The watch glitches out. So I guess virtual reality accidents can cause loss of fingers. In this next video, we have Caddy. Now I want you to pay attention to her neck and the way her neckline goes into her shirt. It's cut off. And the necklace. Apparently they wanted to show how cool this necklace looked. Unfortunately, it's not perfect. The necklace goes in and out of her shirt unnaturally, and her neck glitches in several places. I literally spent hours going after probably 30 or 40 videos, probably had approximately 45 minutes straight of NASA messing up the virtual reality setup. I tried to pick some clips that were obvious and some not so obvious. Show you some of the contacts. We're going to see Tim Peake with his contacts in, but these are virtual reality contacts overlaid on the eyes so actors can interact with things in 3D space, all in real time.
The extended mode is much quieter than the full motion mode. In full motion mode, you can actually hear the sound of the jet engines, the engines of the airplane. In every single scene of full motion mode, in every segment of the International Space Station, you can hear this loud sound, the sound of the jet engines. You could argue that it's the air conditioning system. Not even an office air conditioner is that loud. And why is there a loud sound in every segment of the International Space Station? That's because no matter how soundproof you make it, you can't filter out all of the sound of the jet engines. An airplane is just too noisy. You can put noise-cancelling headphones on when you're on a plane, and that doesn't stop the sound from getting through. It muffles it.
Japanese lab Kibo. So Koichi, walk me through what you're working on in this lab.
Yeah, this is an experiment called Spheres. And these satellite robots are specifically designed to function in the microgravity.
They contain the software that the scientists are testing.
At first, this looks like a full motion scene to me, but on closer inspection, I think this is a suspended mode scene. When it's sped up, you can kind of see them swinging, and it has the same backdrop as the other suspended mode scenes.
Lunch.
And then there's this weird part. Rick Mastracchio puts out his hand and he moves forward. Maybe he's using his feet to wedge himself forward somehow, but it doesn't look like it. The floor is smooth. His foot is behind that blue handle that's attached to the floor.
Beyond, of course, all the communication technology that we're working on to be able to connect with you guys,
Greetings from the International Space Station and the crew of ISS Expedition 26. Currently, we're orbiting the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour, over 200 miles above our beautiful planet that we should all be thankful to have as our home. I'd like to wish everyone on the planet Earth a happy holidays and a very Merry Christmas.
The holidays are a time that we treasure being with our family and our friends, and we think about what we have and how much more we have than others do. Times are hard all over the world, but this is a time when we can all think about being together and treasuring our planet, and we have a pretty nice view of it up here.
From up here we see one world, one Earth, and all together we should celebrate this holiday. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Have a look at her hair. There's something odd about her hair. I know this is zero gravity and hair is supposed to stick out and go all over the place, but her hair doesn't really flop around naturally. It's always sticking out kind of rigidly. Maybe they permed it in that position, or perhaps they're hanging her upside down. As she shakes her head from side to side slightly, you can see the hair always springs back to a particular position with respect to her head. It should flop all over the place. The chain that she's wearing around her neck is a computer graphic. This is computer-generated images. Koichi Wakata is looking at the window there. This is full motion mode, and you can tell because of the sound of jet engines. In quiet mode, they can go to the cupola and they can look through at their model. And you can see an amazing model. Gee, why would you build the International Space Station out of a bunch of long, thin segments that can easily break at the joints? So there's their fairly realistic view of the rest of the International Space Station. Another curious aspect is how they deal with water. There's no proper shower, so they must be incredibly uncomfortable and stinky the whole time, yet they have huge smiles plastered on their face. They can't have a proper shower. Nevertheless, they must use some water in order to clean themselves, in order to clean their hair. What do they do with this water? Supposedly they have suction for when they urinate, but aside from that, there are no special vacuum sinks. In other words, there's water floating around all over the International Space Station. And what do you do with this water, especially dirty water? Because that's what water does. It absorbs dirt and particles. They would accumulate so much filthy water. The mantra, of course, is recycling. They're supposed to recycle everything. Wow, they have some amazing recycling technologies on the International Space Station that they can't demonstrate anywhere else. I mean, It's a super water recycler that's compact enough to fit inside the International Space Station. Imagine how much maintenance such a system would require. You'd have to bring up so many filters and chemicals, and things would be breaking down and you'd have to repair it, but you don't have the tools to do it. So there's another curious, strange aspect of the International Space Station.
For astronaut Joe, are you conducting any experiments that will help us here on Earth relating to energy conservation, waste reduction, or other issues?
Well, that's a great question. Just living on the space station, we're doing a little bit of all of that. We have solar arrays, so we're using power from the sun. All of our water we recycle, so it might not sound too good, but what we might urinate today, we'll be drinking shortly. So we're doing that, and we try to minimize any of the waste that we have on board. So we're doing a little bit of that every day, just living on the space station.
For us.
So take this woman, Sunita Williams, has supposedly been on the station for 200 days. She's never had a proper shower in that time. She's never laundered her clothes. She just wears her clothes for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, a month, and then throws them out. In other words, she stinks. She's horrible. She's clammy.
We're showering with just wet flannels. We heat them up we've got a portable water dispenser. We can put some hot water in that soapy flannel, and then we basically have a body wash. It's a little bit like camping for 6 months. You keep yourself clean as best you can. We've got special shampoo called no rinse shampoo, so we can wash our hair without having to rinse it out with water. And that's basically how we keep clean.
My name is Hannah, and my question is for Stephanie Wilson. How do you wash and dry your hair in space?
Very good.
We actually fly a rinseless shampoo. We do have a way to get water from our galley, which is kind of like a kitchen sink. But so basically you're able to wet your hair and then use this rinseless shampoo and then rinse it again and towel dry. And that usually does a pretty good trip. We kind of consider ourselves to be on a camping trip.
I definitely haven't mastered it. I'll give you a trial and I'll show you just how bad it is. Practice makes perfect. Give me another week. Practice makes perfect.
And that's why it's very important to understand and to keep monitoring precisely what's happening on the Earth. And ISS is playing a key role in there.
Job done every day.
I don't know. We're going to have to do something for you.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Watch this. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Watch this.
Thank you very much. I know we've got limited time. You've got lots to do up there, but I guess you one last question. Lots to do up there, but I guess you one last question. Lots to do up there, but I guess you lots to do up there.
With suspension in front of a blue screen, and they use that trick for extended periods of time, for longer than 45-second segments, but they can't move around as much. They can't do the acrobatic flips and rolls in the extended mode. So there's full motion mode where they can fully move around, and that's faked in a plane, and then there's suspended or extended mode where they're suspended by wires in front of a blue screen. They don't move around as much, but they can make the scene last for a longer period of time. In this scene, Chris Hadfield bends down in order to adjust something, and you can see on the back of his shirt a couple of upticks on either side where you would expect wires to come in on either side of that harness in order to support it. Of course, they've computer graphicked out the supporting wires. You can't actually see them, but what you can see is a very slight discoloration where it's slightly lighter and then it goes slightly darker. And that's strange. That shows a couple of things.
Which you designed in a certain way to have it actually, the screen direction's flopped, right?
Yes, yeah. It's on wires, but it's all upside down, and then the camera does a sort of rotational move that makes everything else look. It's sort of, we found like the, even little tricks like flopping images or things like that, or putting a camera upside down or things like that could do a ton, because
could really help sell it.
Because the intent actually is to sort of confuse the viewer enough in terms of directionality, because that's sort of what space does. There, they actually aren't on any wires at all. They're just sort of moving, kind of acting like that. But the set has been clocked and turned around, so that it's, again, you're disoriented. You get away with it for just that brief scene, plus with an object floating by, like the film canisters and things. Just
the camera back.
Things like that can hopefully do just enough to help sell it. Yeah.
True code of conduct that applies to all astronauts to follow.
Curious to hear about what kind of technology you guys are working on that's going to help us travel to Mars. Beyond, of course, all the communication technology that we're working on to be able to connect with you guys.
I definitely haven't mastered it. I'll give you a trial and I'll show you just how bad it is. Practice makes perfect. Give me another week. Show you just how bad it is.
Okay, I have a lot of Tim Peake screw-ups, but this one here, the system glitches. The software does not track his hand properly, and Tim slips his hand underneath his other fingers, which is tightly holding onto the mic, which would be impossible. I don't think this is Tim's fault. Normally, Tim always moves his other fingers up while he slides his hand under. I just think the system didn't respond to his movements here. This picture here is actually Tim's fault. His hand breaches the 3D mic floating in front of him. In this next clip, we're going to see Tim's arms glitch out as he's manipulating a 3D bubble. Now, this bubble can be done in real time now. We have the technology to do that, which I showed you at the beginning of this. And this bubble is environmentally lit, or HDRI lit, by its environment, which means the bubble can take up its reflections and refractions as it moves around in 3D space in Tim's augmented reality. Once again, augmented VR just means bringing the 3D objects into our world on a separate monitor.
Into school, math and science were kind of my favorite subject. I didn't really like English in reading too much, but I've since grown out of that and I enjoy reading now. And I played a lot of sports. And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now. And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
Hello, my name is Steve Owen. I'm a teacher here at Riverside Prep.
I'd like to ask you about the stress associated with the long periods in the space station. I'd like to ask Karen, what is the training that you get to cope with that stress and related psychological issues?
Well, for psychological issues, actually, when we are selected as astronauts, we go through quite a vigorous psychological screening process. You certainly don't want somebody who comes up here and has a breakdown or is claustrophobic. But also, we have, well, like Chris's background as a Navy SEAL and Luca's background as a test pilot clearly prepare them for high-stress situations. I could also argue that going through the process of getting a PhD can be a high-stress thing as well. And so, generally, when people get to the point where they're applying for this job, they've been through several things in their life that are high stress, and have proven that they can handle it and that they can get through it. And then also, once we start as an astronaut, for me, who did not have a flying background or have the military background where maybe I was put under some of that stress in a very critical situation, we started.
Which is obviously astronauts train extensively for this kind of a mission. But is there anything in particular that you weren't expecting or that surprised you? Like the microphone?
What's the most fun for you? I mean, is that it? Is weightlessness it? If somebody asks you what's the most fun?
You know, I think the most fun thing for me, aside from being able just to do something like that whenever you feel like it, is being able to share this experience. And so I try and keep in touch with friends and family through email and using the phone. You know, I think the most fun thing for me, the most fun thing for me
As you can see, I'll float, Mark is floating, and so it really takes a lot of effort to learn how to control that. When I set things down on the ground, you can let it go and it sits there. And so we think, just like at home, you have your lights on the ceiling, so that is up. But then you can do this, like Randy's doing right now. It looks like for him, that he's standing up. So there's really no sense of direction other than maybe the writing on the walls and the lights that we have. Really neat when you're working, you can get in all different kinds of spots, and it all seems to work fine. So it's a great place to live and work.
Happy that Iowa is so interested in spaceflight and NASA.
It is a real honor to...
This is Houston ACR.
It is a real honor to...
includes the KCRG TV portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from KT.
It is a real honor to be able to touch base with the International Space Station, and that's what we're doing right now, visiting with Commander Shane Kimbrough
Commander on the International Space Station. Commander, thanks so much for some of your time.
Hey, it's great to be with you today.
Happy holidays to you, and tell us a little bit about how you're spending this holiday season up at the space station and what you have going on.
Well, we had a nice weekend. We got an extra day on Monday. We had Monday off as well to celebrate the Christmas holiday. And what we did was shared it with our Russian cosmonaut colleagues who their Christmas isn't until January 7th. So we had them down for a nice dinner on Christmas Eve. We actually got some cookies out and showed them how to decorate Christmas cookies, and we actually had a contest with them. They did very well. Actually, they actually won the contest, so they were very creative. And we just watched some Christmas movies, got to call home, and tried to make it as much like home as possible.
Well, there's no losers. This is Houston. A long way away from your hometown of Killeen to be up in outer space over the holiday season.
ACR, that concludes the KCRG TV portion of the event.
But they never talk about the dust. They never talk about the solid waste from the supposed space-age sewage system that they have. That's another strange thing, is supposedly they have a sewage system. I don't know how they cram it into the International Space Station. Perhaps it's in the walls of the station, but they never talk about the smell. It'd be impossible to avoid the smell of a sewage system in the walls of the International Space Station, because they're trapped inside this tin can. It's completely sealed from the vacuum of space. You could have any number of super filters and try and get rid of the smell. It wouldn't work. They never talk about bringing bacteria up in order to replenish the bacteria that's in the sewage system. They never talk about bringing all of the extra oxygen up that you'd need to let the bacteria process the sewage. In fact, what they must do is simply store their feces in the cupboard. They would have to put on a pair of plastic gloves and grab their feces and put it in the closet. There's no sewage system on there. They can pretend that there's a sewage system. There's no sewage system. So in other words, they're living with their own feces, and the smell must be incredible. Yet they always have huge smiles plastered on their face, like the International Space Station is the best place in the world to be. Well, supposedly there's a trash disposal thing in the form of a re-entry vehicle which strangely burns up on re-entry, even though the ones with humans inside supposedly survive re-entry. That's a very curious contradiction, but they have a trash disposal capsule that they put their trash into.
Of course, a washing machine and a dryer, we don't have anything like that. So we just wear our clothes till they wear out, and then you throw them in the trash, and the trash is like a little unmanned resupply ship. And when it gets full of trash, then we close the hatch, and it undocks and backs away and falls down into the atmosphere. So your dirty laundry actually gets incinerated in the atmosphere.
Extended mode scene. Chris Hadfield on the right is going back. He's going back, and then he just stops. That's an odd motion. You would expect, if this was true zero gravity, that you have to support yourself, you have to stop yourself on both the top and the bottom of your body as you're drifting back. If you just stop yourself with your feet, then your head will rotate backwards. Conversely, if you just hang on at the top with your hands, then your feet will still keep moving. You have to support yourself at both the top and the bottom of your body. But his hands, Chris Hadfield's hands, aren't touching anything. He just goes back and then he stops.
Jolt her up, look. Jolt her up, look. Watch it travel up her back and jolt her upwards. There's some sort of harness that's travelling, the wires are travelling up her back. And then check this part. Something's pulling on her back and it's making her slide forwards. Did you look? Can you spot it? Near her shoulders you can see like wires pulling on her top. As the wires pull tight, then it pulls her forward and she slides.
My name is Tala and my question is for Alan. What do you do for fun while you're in space?
I think you've seen some of it. We can do just incredible things. You know, it's fun to just float, and it's fun to we were playing. We had a little bit of time off earlier, and I think Mr. Clay has got a baseball, and we were playing baseball inside the space station, and it's really easy. To hit balls a long way in space, but it's fun just to float. And it's fun to look out the windows. And it's fun to just spend time with your crewmates.
My name is Brandon, and my question for Dottie.
My name is Seven, and my question is for Stephanie Wilson. What inspires you to become an astronaut? My name is Seven, and my question is for Stephanie Wilson. What inspires you to become an astronaut?
Houston, this is the International Space Station. We're ready for the event.
My name is Jordan, and my question is for Dottie Metcalf-Lindenberger. What science-related experiments will be conducted on this mission?
And Jordan, that is a very good question. Obviously, we've come to the International Space Station, which is now a national laboratory, and but on the shuttle, we also do science experiments. One of the experiments that we've brought up is actually to help humans better understand the staph infection MRSA and develop a vaccine for it. And another experiment that we brought up and we brought to station is the Window Observatory Rack facility called WRF. And with that window, which is already part of our lab, now we have a rack where we can do all sorts of optics from visual to near infrared. And so there's all sorts of science up here, but those are just a few of the things that we brought up on STS-131.
My name is Kendra, and my question is for Clay Anderson. What core or elective courses did you have to take in order to be an astronaut?
Kendra, you need to take lots of math and lots of science in order to become an astronaut. Those are the basic fundamentals to be able to fly in space. So good luck.
And those racks are installed in the various laboratories around the station, along with all the other supplies we brought up. As you can see, it's a lot of fun to fly in space, too.
My name is Cameron Lovelace, and my question is for Dottie. What do you like about being an astronaut?
Well, you just saw it. I love floating around. That's one of my favorite things that I've been doing since I've been up here. Another one of my favorite things is looking out the window. Last night I got a chance to go to the cupola, which is a brand new facility that STS-130 brought up about a month and a half ago. And the windows allow you to see the Earth in a 360 view, and it's incredible. And we watched all the way down California's coast, down through South America, and then below the tip of South America and into a night pass, and we could see the sunset, and it's way better than television. So I hope that you guys could all do that someday instead of watching television.
Coming. We should hear it in the room very shortly.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event? Yes, we're ready for the event. Please call station for a voice check.
Okay, here we go. Hello, Commander Fisher and Commander Whitson and Colonel Fisher. It is an honor for all of us and those online to join you and all of your colleagues at NASA in the first ever live 4K stream from space. What is the ISS position in orbit right now? "11 seconds.
Well, we're just passing over Baja, California, and we're heading in an arc over North America. By the time we finish talking, we'll be over Central Africa.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. Before we learn more about NASA's
Central Africa.
Wow. Amazing, amazing.
Central Africa.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. Use of Live 4K, I'd like to share about Peggy's exciting achievement that was recently made on the ISS and in space. Peggy, you've made 8 spacewalks, and you recently set the record for the most days in space by an American astronaut. Congratulations. What inspired you to become an astronaut?
Actually, when I was growing up, I saw the first men walk on the moon, and I thought, wow, cool job. Of course, it didn't really become a goal of mine. It was just a dream. But when I graduated from high school, the first female astronauts were selected. And that's when it truly became a goal for me. Luckily, I had no idea how hard it would be, and I just worked really, really hard and spent a lot of years getting there, and a lot of hard work. But in the end, I got lucky, and some of that work paid off. So it's been well worth the journey, for sure.
Well, it's an inspiration to thousands of students in the United States and the entire world, so thank you so much. Now, of course, we're calling from the NAB show here in Las Vegas, where next generation broadcast and production technology comes to life. Are there any films about space that have truly inspired you?
For me, I think you've seen some of it. We can do just incredible things. You know, it's fun to just float, and it's fun to we were playing. We had a little bit of time off earlier, and I think Mr. Clay has got a baseball, and we were playing baseball inside the space station, and it's really easy to hit balls a long way in space. But it's fun just to float, and it's fun to look out the windows, and it's fun to just spend time with your crewmates.
My name is Brandon, and my question for Dottie, what goes through your mind before, during, and after a launch?
Because of actual cold weather on the East Coast this winter and spring, and so that extra time gave us a little bit more time with our families. But you're just very focused, thinking over the last lessons that you've learned for robotics, for spacewalks, for ascent, and for entry, doing our last simulations. And then once we got on orbit, you have the mindset of, let's really just get this job done and do it very well. And so you find yourself doing, of course, your job, but you also find yourself doing and helping others in jobs that you didn't completely train for, that you were maybe a backup in, but it just makes sense at the time that you do it because you need to get the job done. And you lose all track of time. You don't know which meal you're eating sometimes, because really you're just going from work event to work event to make sure that the mission is carried out successfully. And then when we get back on Earth, our focus is going to turn to passing on any lessons learned that we have, and then of course spending lots of good quality time with our family.
Crew of STS-131, this is Gregory Slate. We would like to thank you on behalf of Eastern Guilford High School. Students, please show them a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Wildcats. Thanks very much to the Wildcats at Guilford High School for joining us today on the International Space Station. It was our pleasure, and thanks very much. Study hard and do great in school. We appreciate the time you spent with us. Thanks.
Discovery ISS, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
And thank you,
Thanks a lot.
everyone at Eastern Guilford High School, ISS.
So you decide for yourself. If we have the technology to build the space station and have people go and live in the space station for months and months at a time, and they are there constantly reporting back to Earth the things that they are finding there, then the question is, why go through all this trouble as far as faking the space station itself? Why go through the trouble of faking these people in space who are supposed to be the astronauts who are in space and have their arms disappear from the screen just like that? Why have that?
So other questions that were here are, what would you recommend as a job, if so, and to what type of person would want to be an astronaut? I think people who would like to explore, of course people who like math and science, that's what this is all about. We have people in the office who are doctors, teachers, veterinarians, engineers, pilots, so all sorts of people become astronauts, and I think if you see it's just sort of cool, so I think people who like to do a little adventure and like to do cool stuff probably usually become astronauts. And you can't help but want to just come to the cupola and look outside as much as you can. And a lot of folks, I play this game with myself about where we're flying over the Earth. Try to come in here and just guess. After being here for a little while, you can sort of figure it out. You can tell different cloud types over different continents. You can tell different soil types over different continents. So let's see. And then, of course, there's a lot of ocean. So usually we're over the ocean at first glance. I will tell you in just a moment where we are. There we go. So right now we are right over Africa. It's a little bit cloudy, as you can tell, but we're right over the continent of Africa. Hey, what's that? I think that's a Soyuz spacecraft. That's the spacecraft that's taken us home to planet Earth today. Oh my gosh.
The other shuttles are being competed for, and the folks that want to have those shuttles have to pay a lot of money because they have to be able to show NASA that they'll be able to take care of them and keep them looking good.
My name is Dalton, and my question is for Alan. What do you believe is the most important thing we've learned from the space flight?
Well, as you know, a lot of the things that we do now affect people a long time in the future. And when you students are grown and we'll know the full impact probably of what the research that we're doing now on the International Space Station is. But I think one of the most important things that we've learned about spaceflight is that we need to keep doing it. It's important for humans to always explore. And like Lewis and Clark explored the trails to the West Coast, we're now exploring space in low Earth orbit and hopefully soon to different planets.
It's one, you need to be patient, but I think just as important is you need to find something that you love. And no matter what, then, if you don't get selected as an astronaut, at least you're doing something that you're very passionate about, that you want to be doing, and that you're excited about every morning when you get up and go to work. And that's probably the best advice I could give you.
I was a little boy. We were landing men on the moon. It's like money in the bank, and it provides opportunities. When you learn more, it's something that you can use. I was a little boy. We were landing men on the moon. It's like money in the bank, and it provides opportunities. When you learn more, it's something that you can use.
Yeah, we will. Thanks for having me, and it was great talking to you. Happy holidays to everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
What an inspiration to the young people in the world. It's really inspiring. This is how inspirational.
With us, happy holidays, and hope there's a couple spare Christmas cookies from the cookie party that you can get lunch on over the next couple
country, please have faith in me.
Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles.
So the 25th Space Shuttle mission is now on the way after more delays than NASA cares to count. This morning, it looked as though they were not going to be able to get off.
1 minute, 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
Looks like a couple of the solid rocket boosters blew away from the side of the shuttle in an explosion.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation.